there. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. And thank you so much for joining us today for the Smarter Career Moves LinkedIn Live show. I'm Annette Richmond, and I'm the host of this show. And I'm so excited to have Ken Sher as my guest today. Ken, I think I met you sometime last year, and we've collaborated a couple of times on Clubhouse. So
Yeah.
we've gotten to know each other a little bit, and so I'm very excited that you said yes when I invited you to come on the show. So for people who don't know you, tell us a little bit about who you are and what you do.
All right. Thank you. And I'm really happy to be here. I've followed you for a while and you do some great stuff on LinkedIn. So I'm glad to be talking to you live here. I am a career coach and an executive coach. And this all started, actually, I spent 25 years at Johnson & Johnson. I was in different leadership roles and led a few different sales training and leadership development teams. And then unfortunately, like a lot of people that might be watching and a lot of your clients, I got laid off. I was 52 years old with two kids in college and one in high school, and it was a very difficult time for me. But I picked myself up, dusted myself off. I actually got three new jobs while I was in my 50s. Last one with Bristol Myers when I realized I was done with corporate America, and corporate America was probably done with me too. So about 7 years ago, I hung my shingle and my practice as an executive coach and career coach, and been loving doing it ever since.
Well, I love that. And thank you for saying that because so many people that I speak with, and I think I'm sure, clients that you speak with as well, are so afraid of age discrimination that they feel like, if I'm 50, I've had girlfriends of mine tell me that they feel it in their 40s.
Mm.
That I'm not going to be able to find a job, and that's really not the case. I mean, you can only control what you can control, but attitude and strategy all makes a big difference. So
Mhm.
um, I did see that, because I know you as a career coach, and I see that you also do leadership coaching. And a lot of the people that I talk to that come to me to work with me are people who they want to advance in their career. They decide they want to become, the director or VP or higher.
Mhm.
And I'm sure you hear this, people think if I just keep my head down and I work hard and I do
Mhm.
good work, that, that's what I need. That's all I need to do. And the thing is that, the boss and the boss's boss probably don't notice if you're just doing that, working.
Mhm.
So, what's your advice for someone who wants to advance in their career? Either at their current company or if they, want to look for an opportunity elsewhere.
Yeah, I think it's a great point about, yeah, it'd be great if our work spoke for itself and we didn't have to do any self promotion or marketing. And I do think there's a balance, right? Because we probably all know people that all they do is self promote and, kiss up to the leaders
Yeah.
without much substance. So I do think there is that combination. You've got to do your work, but, and I'm sure you see this too with your clients in transition. They don't like to brag about themselves. They don't want to, call attention to themselves. And I get that. I think humility is a great part of leadership. But I do think you do have to let people know what you're doing, and you can do it in a way that is comfortable to you without sounding like all you're about is self promotion. Oftentimes, for example, I might talk to people about, promote the work your team is doing. Talk about we, if you must, and then talk about, and here was my contribution. Um, so you're not just talking about you, you're talking about the benefits that the team's delivering.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I say that too. And of course, there's so many jobs where people are part of a team. But of course, you want to highlight your part as well, right? What you've
Yes.
done.
Yeah.
So
Mhm.
how can they do that? Do you recommend trying to, sort of meet with the boss on a regular basis or network within the organization? What are some
Mhm.
strategies?
Yeah, and I think, it's funny as you're talking, and I'm thinking there are so many parallels between people in career transition and what you're talking about here. I do think internal networking is really important. It's important for the role you're in because it'll help you understand the bigger business better. It'll help you connect with people and see maybe how your work connects with other people's work. And then also it may open up opportunities for you in the future. And then I do think meeting regularly, I think a great leader will meet regularly with their direct reports. And those meetings, I always suggest to my clients that they're regularly scheduled, so they're on the calendar, otherwise they'll never happen.
Yeah.
Right? And even if they're canceled every now and then, you have a better chance they'll happen. The other thing is that they're really not about the specific work that's being worked on. The leader should be talking to that person about how are things going, what's going well for you, what's getting in your way, how can I help you to be more successful? What are your career aspirations, and are you moving towards there, or do we need to do something to help you with your development? So I think it's a matter of regular meetings and updates with your supervisor. If they're not initiating them, then I think as an employee, you should do that. I think it's talking to other people around the company. And again, I think it's also promoting the work your team is doing as well as what you're doing.
Yes, yes, absolutely, absolutely. I also noticed that you do use some assessments in your, in your coaching practice. And, I actually was MBTI certified like 20 years ago. I used to be something, and it was very popular at the time, and it doesn't seem to be as much now. The DISC, which I know is one that you use, seems to be, and the Clifton Strengths Finder is another one that I hear people talk about all the time. So, what part would you say that assessments play, in the job search? And is it just for job search, or if I'm just, a middle manager or someone in a company, can that help me as well?
Yeah, I think personality assessments, and you're right, I do use DISC in particular, are really great tools to help you figure out the best way to communicate in order to be able to connect with your audience, whoever that is, whether it's a client or customer or whether it's an internal stakeholder. I actually do a lot of speaking on DISC. I just did a talk the other day at the University of Delaware. And, with DISC, there are 4 personality types, and each one communicates in a different way. And I do believe that relationships are really the key to success. And it doesn't mean being best friends with people, it just means having good, productive relationships. I have something I call the trust success model. And I always say trust is the foundation of great relationships are the foundation of success. So just an example, the D in DISC is a dominant personality. It's very strong, very direct in their communication, results oriented. They don't really care about how we get there. Let's just get there.
Okay.
The opposite side of that would be the S, which is more supportive. And this type of personality is more, let me help you out. Let's do this together. They might even be good for a good group hug every now and then, just to make sure everybody feels good about things. So the eagle, that's, I often will put birds associated with those things. So the D is associated with an eagle, very strong, powerful, might be very directive in their communication to that S, which is represented by a dove. And that could come across very cold, come across as angry, come across as very directive. And that S could be saying, oh my, what did I do wrong? What did I do to get this person so mad? When in fact, that's not the case. So it takes an understanding to be able to adjust your communication or accept the communication in a way that will make it effective.
Yeah. It sounds, as I'm listening to you speak, also that it's not just if I'm taking an assessment, it's not just for me to understand myself, but it helps me understand others, because, I think we so often, we don't think about how others are communicating to us. And it's one of those things, I think, along with listening, that we don't study unless you're in university and you're studying communication. We don't study communication when we're in grade school and high school. We're raised, our parents teach us how to speak and read. Well, we learn to read in school, but I think we don't realize that there are communication skills, because we think we know, because we've kind of been doing it all of our lives.
Right. And from a career perspective, too, a lot of times people are taught how to be a good doctor, how to be a good accountant, how to be a good IT specialist. But so technically they could be great, but if you can't communicate effectively, that's going to be a real career limiter for you.
Yeah, yeah. So I just want to say hi to Dean, who is joining us from Hartford. So thank you so much for being here with us. We appreciate it. And if you have any questions for Ken, please do put them in the chat. I know if you are looking for a job, obviously, I don't suggest that you put any questions in the comments right now, because, you're probably looking in stealth mode. So as my friend Brenda Meller says, but please do put questions if you can in the chat. So, I'd like to turn now to the Trust Success Program, which, you just mentioned. And I know this is something that, you have developed, and you use it when you work with your clients. And I know that part of it, developing this, that you drew on your experience as a hiring manager and as someone who worked in, training and development to develop this plan. And the first couple of points of it seem to really focus on understanding what you bring to the table, and understanding, learning how to present that clearly, to others. So if
Mm-hmm.
you can go through those first two things, that would be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I think also this is a great segue from the conversation about personalities and DISC, for example, because I do think it does start with self-awareness. It does start with understanding what you have to offer, what are your strengths, what are your areas for development, and where do you want to go with your career, whether you're looking for a job or you're in a role trying to um, get one of greater responsibility. So in my trust success model, it's an acronym. And Annette, as you know, all great models have to be an acronym, right?
Of course.
And it stands for transparency, results, understanding, simplify, and team. The first two that you asked about, transparency. So that's about, if you're looking for a job, it's about really taking some time to be introspective and understand those things I mentioned, your strengths, your areas for development, your experiences, and what direction do you want to take your career? And to really understand what you need in that career, both personally and professionally. Um, the If you're in a role, transparency as a leader, for example, or even as a teammate, is about having all the cards on the table, not holding anything back, and maybe making people feel like, what aren't they telling me? I don't feel like I'm really part of this. And when you are transparent as a leader or teammate, and they know that your people have all that information, they can handle challenges that come their way better, and they can take advantage of opportunities better. And then the R is results. And that's obviously, we need to deliver results. But one of the things I learned at Johnson & Johnson is it's also how you deliver results. If you leave bodies in your wake, as we used to say, it's not a good result, no matter what the outcome is. So you
Yeah.
need to be able to bring people along with you. You need people to, feel engaged, and it not only has to get that result, but hopefully lead to others.
Yeah, I think that's something too, because was asking you about leadership. And for me, the clients that I work with, it seems a sign of a good leader is someone who actually is able to, train and mentor someone who becomes a rock star in their own right.
Yeah. But, a lot of people, there are some leaders that are afraid of that. They
Yeah.
think, oh, if I make them too good, then they're not going to need me anymore. And I suppose there probably are some small-minded organizations that go that way. But I think for the most part, a leader's approach should be, if my team looks good and my people get better, then I'm going to look good and I'm going to get better.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I know one of the reasons that people do leave jobs is that they don't have that opportunity to advance or for
Mhm.
professional development,
Yeah.
and all of that. So, so moving on through the sort of the trust program, every career professional, me, everybody says networking is the way to find a job. You know, you
Hmm.
have to be networking. And I love that that is part of your plan, the whole networking thing. And one of the a couple of things that I was reading is about opening up these networking conversations, and so that can be, I think, a struggle for people. They don't know how to open
Hmm.
up those networking conversations. So if you could talk a little bit about that, and then I'm going to ask you about how what part social media plays in that.
Okay. Well, Annette, I tell you, I thought this was going to just be an easy softball kind of interview. You're asking good questions. It really get me thinking. So thank you for that. Well, as you know, Annette, probably at least three-quarters of jobs today are landed through someone you know. So it's through networking. But with that, I always really, it's almost like a warning to my clients is that networking is not about asking for a job. And the reason why I think it's so important is because, first of all, it takes some of the pressure off and it takes some of that stress of feeling like, oh, they know I'm asking for a job. I hate to bother them, et cetera, et cetera. So that's the first thing people need to know. And then from my perspective, networking is about learning from other people. It's about learning about their career, how they got to where they are, what they do in their role that they really love, and maybe what they don't like. It's certainly about asking for advice. Here's where I am, and I'm looking to do this. Do you have any ideas of how I might get there? It's asking about, are there other people you could connect me with that I might have a similar networking conversation? And then, as important as everything else, it's asking about how can I help you? Because you want to make sure that that person's time is they realize you value it, and that you also want to give back, and people want to help people that are willing to help them as well. And then, of course, you follow up with a thank you. And once you do have that networking connection, keep it warm. Check in every now and then. Let them know what you're doing. Ask them what they're doing. It's about building good relationships. And then the outcome of that is whether you're in that discussion, the person might say, oh, I don't have anything, but I know somebody. Let me introduce you to. Or
Yes.
maybe a couple months later, you see a role in online, and you could call that person back and say, oh, I see this position's open at your company. Would you get my resume in front of the hiring
Hmm.
manager?
Hmm.
So that's
Yeah.
my approach.
You
Mhm.
know, absolutely, that's so true. And I think so many people say, oh, I hate networking, but they don't realize that we do that all the time. I mean, the
Mm.
last time we refinanced our house, well, you know what? I turned to someone that I'd known for a decade who I just met. We were friends, but she was someone who, worked in refinance. So,
Mhm.
it's not about that transactional. And, the quickest way to alienate people is to connect with them and say, you connect with them, and as soon as you connect with them, you say, "Oh, do you have a job? Do you know of a job for me?" Or what I get sometimes is, and I'm sure you get this too, is you connect with somebody and they immediately say, "Oh, can we have a coffee chat, a virtual coffee chat?" And it's like,
Mhm.
well, let's know each other a little bit first.
Yeah.
So,
Mhm.
social media too, we've talked about this before, plays a part in the networking,
Mhm.
particularly today. And I hear, and I'm sure you hear, there's some, LinkedIn people who say, oh, you must post, 7 days a week, or you must post 5 days a week. And, there's all this must do's. And I think that kind of scares people. So
Mm.
what's your take on that whole, how to use social media, LinkedIn, in this networking sort of building relationships capacity?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's key, and my focus typically is on LinkedIn for business type coaching.
Yeah.
Work on social networking. I do post on my business page on Facebook as well, but I mean, as many people and as busy as it is on LinkedIn, it's even worse on Facebook. So it's hard to be seen or heard. So focusing on LinkedIn, I do think LinkedIn is not a spectator sport. I mean, if you really want to get value out of it, you do have to be engaged.
Yes.
But I think you make a great point in that if people feel like, oh, I have to be on 7 days a week, I have to post every day, then a lot of times they're going to say, well, I can't do that, so I'm not going to do anything. So I like to think my coaching in general is practical, and I work with my clients. Well, what would work for you? And we start off. I just with one client started off. How about 15 minutes in the morning when you wake up? Just look at LinkedIn. 15 minutes a day. Just look at it. If you want to comment on something, and And I don't just mean great post, although if that's where you need to start, that's where you start. But something that shows you have an understanding and that you're knowledgeable. And you might repost something. If you like to write, you might post, you might do a video, but you don't have to do all that. Just be engaged, get your name out there as if you can, at least once a week. I mean, like I said, I think 3 would be nice, but don't don't pressure yourself.
Yeah.
Just know what's going on out there. Then if you can get your name out there, and the more you do, because recruiters are on LinkedIn, and the more they see your name, the more likely they are to say, let me check out their profile and see what this person is. I might need someone like this.
Oh, absolutely. I actually teach my clients that to, look for recruiters and then follow them and engage with them, because it's a good way for you to get to know them and them to get to know you, because, there's so much talk about, it's not what you know, it's who you know. And, I think I'm not the only one to say this for sure. It's about who knows you, really. Because I may know a lot of people, but if they don't know me, it's not going to, help me move forward in my career or whatever.
Yeah.
So I also saw that you have, because you also coach your clients on interviewing, and you have something that you call the 3 Ps of interviewing. So tell us a little bit about that and help people with some interview prep, because some people watch live, but a lot of people will be watching us on the replay. So share.
Okay. All right. Sure. So the 3 Ps of interviewing for me are prepare, process, and practice. Prepare is about doing your research, really knowing the company, knowing the marketplace, knowing the competition. And there's plenty of ways to find that out, whether it's LinkedIn or just Google in general, looking at annual reports. I mean, there's a lot of ways to find out, finding people in that company that you could talk to. It's also about knowing yourself, going back to that T of the trust model, knowing, what you want to talk about, what your main message is that you want to make sure you get across for that particular job interview. And it's about just really understanding the whole process. Then the process, actually, I go with the STARS process. And I know a lot of people are familiar with STAR as situation, task, action, result, being STAR. And I add an S at the end, which I'll tell you about in a second. But
okay.
The reason why I think process is so important, and this works, by the way, even if you're just presenting as a current employee, because it's about storytelling. Storytelling is very compelling. It's very memorable. It's interesting. And STARS tell about the situation. Here's what I was doing. Task, here's what I needed to do. Action, here are the actual steps that I took. Results, here was the outcome of that work. And then the last S for me is, so why am I telling you this? And the reason why I think that's important is because it gives you an opportunity to paint the picture of you in that role. And it tells the interviewer, this is exactly what I want you to take away from this story I just told. It eliminates the interpretation that interviewer might have, or at least reduces it. So I really think it's an important part. Even if you don't use the full process, I would say you need to drive the action steps you took, the results you got, and then how that relates to the job you're interviewing for.
Yeah, and my understanding is that there are a lot of companies, I think particularly tech companies, who prefer to have people respond using that STAR method during an interview. And I'm glad that you brought up the idea. Those are the kinds of things you can use when you go into your boss and you're asking for a raise.
Yes. Yeah, great point.
It's not just about finding the next job. So I just want to mention, since we were talking about leaders, and so Dean says, or climbing up the ladder of dead bodies. I once had a boss whose motto is, you either work for me or against me. So yeah, that's one of those things. I'm sure you hear this as well as I do. And there's studies about this all the time, is people leave bosses. They don't necessarily leave jobs. They leave bosses.
Yes. I think you're
No, go ahead.
No, I think you're right. I think the concept of, one of the things, if I could refer, most of my coaching and leadership is around my J&J days, my Johnson & Johnson days. And they had what they call the J&J Credo. And it's a 4-paragraph, 1-page document, talks about responsibility to the healthcare providers and their patients, the employees, third paragraph's about the communities, and the last one's for the stakeholders. Written by Robert Wood Johnson, the founder of J&J. He was the only shareholder at the time, and he put himself last. And to me, that's why that company is so successful, because they think about doing the right things, and they don't always, let's face it, nobody's perfect, but do the right things for those stakeholders, and everything else will take care of itself. And I believe that's how leaders should act.
Oh, I do too. I do too. I agree with you. And rounding out the trust plan that you have, the success plan. I know that you're talking about support system, and I know having a team of cheerleaders has been just invaluable to me. I have friends who have been mentors to me, and
Mhm.
just people that cheer me on. And when that little voice in my head is saying, "Oh, you can't do
Mhm.
that," because the voice never says, "Yeah, you're rocking it." It's always like something bad. They're
Yeah.
like, "Yeah, you can, you can."
Mhm.
So it makes such a difference. So talk a little bit about the support system and how to develop that support system.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and getting back to the trust success model, the last T is about team. And I do think you need to have two kinds of teams. The first one
Okay.
is the support team you're talking about, right? It's
Mhm.
it's your family, your friends, your loved ones that'll pick you up when you're feeling down, especially in a job search. You need these people, right? They'll be there to encourage you, and they'll be there to celebrate with you when the good things happen. So I think you need to look to those people that are just going to be there no matter what. The other team is your network, as we talked about. And these people are not necessarily going to be your cheerleaders, but that's not what you need them for. You need them to help guide you and offer you advice and direction on how you could succeed in the best way possible. So I think both are really important to someone's career.
Oh, absolutely. It makes a lot of sense. And, before I move on, I also want to ask you if you can talk a little bit about, people think about having mentors. So a mentor is great, but a sponsor can be
Mhm.
even better. So can you, because I know that you can share this, can you talk a little bit about sort of the difference between them and how, what roles they play or can
Mhm.
play?
Yeah, I think a mentor is somebody that will help guide you, and they don't necessarily have to be in your company or in your even in the field you're in. In fact, sometimes it's better if they're totally removed, because they could offer you objective feedback. They can give you the guidance that you need that's not shaded by any kind of emotion or any subjectivity. It's them just helping you move forward with your career. A sponsor would be somebody, as I mentioned earlier, who might be able to take your resume and put it in front of a hiring manager, or who's going to be your champion for a particular role or in the job that you're currently in. That's the person that it's almost back to those two teams, right? The mentor is almost like your network. The sponsor is almost like your family or friends that's going to be there
Yeah.
helping you to actually get to that next step.
And I also understand that I think people often think of the mentors being someone maybe older or further along in their career. But
Mhm.
I've also heard people talk about, seeking the advice and help from people that may not be, might be your staff members. So what's your take on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great thought. I think it also it takes some humility and a lot of confidence, right? Because I would say mid to late career person, that's what I'm going to call myself, not an older employee, mid to late career person. There are Gen Zers and kids, right, entering the market now that it's important that we know how to relate to them, how to understand, how to get things done. Technologically speaking, they're much better than I'll ever be, I'm sure. So I think we can learn from younger generations, newer people into the job market, just like they can learn from us. So I think that could be a mutually, and us, I mean me. I'm mid to late career. I'm not talking about you, Annette. You're in the kids, the younger
Oh
stage. It's
yeah.
irrelevant.
Oh
Yeah.
yeah, that's me. Yeah, 29 forever. So and I think it's so interesting. One of the best bosses that I ever had was a woman, a young woman. She was 10 years my junior. And it was when I worked at the magazine, and she was the editor, and, I worked for her. And, she was one of the smartest people that I know. She may have been younger than me in years, but she was certainly way older than me in knowledge. And that position really taught me, just, it was like a master's after I got my bachelor's degree in writing. And so I think you're right. It's having this openness and acceptance of people at all levels, and not necessarily, the gray-haired person being the smartest one in the room, because not always so.
Great point.
So one of the things too, you had mentioned this, that, you had been in learning and development, and it kind of seems like a natural progression to me to, leave that and go into coaching. But what was really the impetus to make you, go into coaching, not something else?
That's a good question. And when I was laid off at J&J, I mentioned to you I was 52 years old, 2 kids in college, 1 in high school, and I do a lot of speaking, Annette, and I share with people the difficulty I had going through that. And frankly, I feel like I was on the verge of clinical depression. I don't think I was there, but I felt like I was looking in this black hole that if I fell in, I may never come out. And I sought professional help, a therapist, and I used to say it jokingly, but it's true. I say with good therapy and good pharmaceuticals, you could pretty much get through anything these days.
Yeah, I agree.
So that definitely was something that got me through that. And then a friend of mine said, "Hey, congratulations!" And I thought he was being a wise guy, and he said, "No, now you could find your passion and do whatever you want to do to make money." And I thought, well, that's great, except I don't know what my passion is. I've been squashing it for 25 years. And so I went through those 3 other jobs, as I mentioned. And then I realized that I didn't like that corporate life anymore. And I did that introspection, that transparency step of the trust model. And I realized that in all my careers, whether I was a sales rep, a sales manager, a sales director, doing leadership development, that coaching and leading people were the things I love to do most. And so I began my coaching practice. And initially I started focusing on people like myself in their 50s who lose their job and how challenging that could be. And I could relate to that. But it has expanded because coaching is my passion. I have refound my passion, and I love doing it, as I know you do, because you can just see it in how you present yourself on LinkedIn and in these kinds of programs. There's nothing better than helping people, is there?
It is a treat. It's always nice. Sometimes I work with clients and I never hear from them again. They go off and, live their lives. And then sometimes I will get an email saying, "Oh, I landed a job and I'm starting on Monday." I actually got one the night before Thanksgiving last year, and it was so exciting. It's always wonderful to get an email like that from somebody who says, "You know what, I landed that job."
Yeah.
So tell me, I know that you talk about, helping people, and that's your passion and you enjoy it. And, I do too. I used to work in nonprofit. I was kind of, when I switched from magazine, I worked in nonprofit for a bit, just how I landed in the career field in the first place. And, but what is it specifically that you enjoy most about what you do? Or maybe it's part of what you do that's the most kind of fun for you?
Excuse me. I love those moments where it clicks for people, where you see that they look at something. Well, often it comes from the conversation starts with, "Well, I haven't done anything special. I don't know what to put on my resume, or, how to talk about myself. I just haven't done anything." And again, Annette, I know you do this with your clients, that as it starts to come out and you could see their demeanor change from, "I don't have anything," to, wow, maybe there is something here. Yeah, I do have something to offer. Let's go get it. That transformation that happens from people who are dejected because either they've lost their job or because they're just stagnant in their current role, to them not only seeing the possibilities, but seeing how they can attain those possibilities. To me, that's very exciting. And literally, I'll get off the phone after a call like that or a Zoom, and I'm buzzing. I'm feeling it. So.
No, it is. It is. I appreciate that too. And I work with clients, I do some interview prep, but a lot of it is developing their LinkedIn profiles and teaching them engagement on LinkedIn and resumes and whatnot. And, I do have them give me those career stories. And, it's hard work for people to
Mhm.
actually, they have to sit and have to think about it and come up with these stories. But, as you say, stories sell. And once they do that work, they have a different perspective. They sort of see their career in a whole new light. And
Mhm.
then often, I'm sure this happens with you, and it happens with me sometimes, where, I will ask them something like, what do you do that might surprise me? Or what else, what do you do off hours? Or what books do you read? Or something like that.
Mhm.
And, the response that they give me makes me see something that they don't even realize is important. And
Mm.
and they say, "Oh, I wasn't thinking about that." So, I mean, I'm
Yeah.
sure you experience that as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the biggest fears or the toughest questions for people to answer in an interview, but I do think it pertains to resume and LinkedIn profiles as well, is the tell me about yourself question.
Yes. Oh, yes.
Right? Right. So often people will go through their career and tell me about, and that's kind of, I mean, that's boring. If you anybody listening, if you're just going through your resume to tell them about yourself, not the way to go. They can read your resume. You need to give them something else. But what an example of where I think people miss is often several times have had clients who are immigrants to the country, and it could have been 20 years ago, whatever. But when I ask them about that, and I don't know, and that I'm guessing you might have experienced this, and they talk about, well, yeah, I came here, I didn't speak English, I didn't know anybody, and I had to learn English, and I did this, and that. And I'm thinking, first of all, it's a fascinating story. Second of all, what does that say about the person for perseverance, for initiative, for innovation, to figure out how to get things done, and for drive? There's a great story there that I think a lot of people miss. And I think there are other examples like that.
Oh, I agree with you completely. And one of the things that I ask the clients that I work with is kind of, how did you get into this career? And, or, what's something different? And I often get stories like, well, my dad was a dentist. And so I wanted to help people. I wanted to be in healthcare, but I didn't want to be hands-on service. So this is someone who ended up working in medical publishing.
Mm,
So there's
yeah.
that tie to it. I
Mhm.
worked with an ER doctor, a woman who actually was running the ER department. And she said, well, I became a doctor because it's the family business. All my uncles and my father and everybody's a doctor. And, I think those stories are certainly interesting, particularly in the LinkedIn, on the
Mm,
LinkedIn profile.
yeah.
Because,
Mhm.
go ahead.
No, no, I agree with you. I think sometimes people, when they're looking for a job or developing their plan or their marketing materials, they feel like, oh, there's a certain way I have to do it. I have to write only in professional jargon. It has to be very, very boom, boom, boom.
Boring.
Exactly. People want to, first of all, the stories you tell about how you got to where you are tell about how you might get to the next level too. So it's important to share those. And to your point, it's much more interesting. I mean, if you can get into a conversation with a person in an interview, for example, it's the ideal place to be, as opposed to interviewer question, interviewee answer. It really
Yeah.
is kind of hard to make a mark doing that.
Oh, I agree with you. Stories are so important. And it is about where you got, and so many people, I think will tell you, I'm sure you talk to people, they go, I'm just passionate about my job. I'm so passionate about my job. Well, when you have those stories, it shows the passion about your job, and you don't
Yeah.
have to tell people, it's all about, you know, showing it, not
Hmm.
telling it.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I
And
appreciate
that's where
that.
those star stories come in handy, right?
Yep.
Because anybody could say, I'm passionate about my job, but let me give you an example. Boom, go into your situation and task, etc.
Yes. Yes. Absolutely. So, as we're getting sort of closer to the end, so tell me something that would surprise me, and people watching or listening to this on the podcast would find surprising about you.
Hmm. What would be surprising about me? I'm pretty much an open book, and people that I am what I am. I think I don't know. Maybe the fact that here's something I do every month. I give blood. I do something called
Oh,
apheresis. Are you familiar with apheresis?
no.
Well, it's a process where they take blood from you, run it through a machine, then they take the platelets and give me back my plasma. And it's about a 2 or 3 hour process. So I'm laying on a bed with two needles in my arm, usually watching a movie. So that makes the time go a little and makes me forget that I have two needles in my arm. But I'm O negative. I'm a universal donor, and that
Oh,
blood
okay.
concentrate, so to speak, is really good for cancer patients. My father passed away from leukemia, so I feel like it's a great way for me to give back in his memory. And it goes back to kind of like coaching. When I'm done doing that, I walk home from that and I feel great. I just did something that is really going to impact somebody's life. So it kind of goes with my approach to life, I
Well,
guess.
I love that, and I have to say it's particularly meaningful to me. I've a couple of days is a longtime friend of mine's birthday. I lost her last year to cancer,
Mhm.
and she used to get transfusions all the time.
Yeah.
So I really
Mhm.
appreciate knowing that, and that's just
Yeah.
a wonderful thing to do.
Yeah, I feel fortunate that I can do it because it does it. I always say it's about giving too, and then I think it's kind of a selfish thing to do because I think giving makes the giver feel better probably than the person that's getting it. So
Yeah.
uh,
And it can be something as little as a compliment, right? I mean, you
yeah,
never know when you happen to see someone or you're working with someone and you compliment what they did, or you just
mm,
see someone and compliment, if I see a woman wearing like some cool shoes, I always mention it. And you just never know what that person's day is like. You
it,
never know when it
mm,
just might be something that would pick them up or perk them up. So um
yeah,
I appreciate that. So I told you at the beginning that I started something new, asking everybody that I interview what their question for the next person. So you can give me that later. But my
yeah.
question for you from my last guest is, what was the last book that you read?
Oh, the last book that I read. Um, uh, I have to admit, I'm not the best reader in the world. I like listening to things.
That's
There's
okay.
there's something called Blinkist, which gives you like abbreviated versions of books. So as I said earlier, and maybe that's why I tell my clients, do what you can do. Don't do what other people expect you to do. So I do love the book, What Got You There, What Got You Here Won't Get You There. And I
Yeah.
just think it makes so much sense that we always have to be evolving. We always have to be learning, and reading is part of that. And always have to be stretching ourselves. If you keep going through the same things over and over again, you're probably not going to get a whole lot further in life. So I'm working with one client, for example. Their company is really successful, and they were very successful because they would just do whatever had to be done. Okay, you do this, I'll do that, and they would run around. Well, now they're big enough that they have to really think about how are we going to get to the next level. We need to have processes. We need to have things that are more aligned with what everybody's strengths are. So I do think that book, "What Got You Here Won't Get You There," is a really valuable one.
Oh, it is. It's a great book. I have it on my shelf as well. I've read it too. I've read it too. So, before we say goodbye, I'd just like to ask you, is there anything that, I didn't ask you that you would like to share that you think is important to
Um,
mention?
yeah, I don't know if it's a question as much as just a comment, regardless of whether you're looking for a job or in a role. I do think people need to try to relax a little bit and not think about everything they do and say having to be done and said in a certain way. I know it's a cliche, be yourself. I've had one or two clients where I said, maybe you should be somebody else. But when you go into that interview, but for the most part, I think it's best practice to just be yourself, be comfortable with yourself, so that your interviewers or your supervisors really know who you are, know what to expect, because not only will that be better for you, but it'll help you go into positions where you could be more successful, because people will know who you are, know what you have to offer, as opposed to you trying to put forward a front that really is not you and won't benefit you if and when you get to that next role.
No, that's wonderful. Thank you. So, are you open to connecting with people on LinkedIn?
Yes, absolutely. I'd love to connect with people on LinkedIn. Also, you could reach me at ken@shercoaching.com. If I can help you in any way, I will. I just love meeting new people, and as we've talked about here, helping if I can.
Well, I thank you so much for being here with me today. The time just flew by, and I really appreciate everything that you shared. If you're out there, thank you for being with us. I know a lot of people, can't say that they're watching, but join me next week for the Smarter Career Moves live broadcast. We are here every Thursday at 11 a.m. Eastern. So thanks so much, and have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.